Welcome everybody to First Garden, New Gardener. I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
And today we're going to talk about how you can get a jump start on your growing season. Whether you have a few containers that you're going to put on your patio, porch, or deck, or if you have a garden plot at the local community garden, or you have your own backyard that you're going to convert into a backyard garden.
Right. So you want to think about which plants that you want to start from seed.
Well, let's talk about, we can start a lot of plants from seed, but let's start and think about what you like to eat before we talk about what you're going to start from seed, because you could start the most hideous, horrible thing that you dislike from seed, and it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. So you want to know what you like before you decide what you're going to plant.
And also there's common plants that people start from seed, such as like tomatoes, cucumbers, or not cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, onions.
Right, and these are some very simple things that you can start inside, whether you have grow lights like we have set up here, or you can actually put these in a windowsill. Now, let's name off some of the do start inside, and some of them you don't want to start inside. Let's go with the positive ones. Let's go with the ones you want to start inside if you're going to start seeds. And if you don't have place to start seeds inside and you don't want to start them in your windowsill, a lot of these seeds and starts can be purchased at your local home and garden center at the appropriate time in your area when it's time to plant them outside. But don't feel ashamed if you can't start them inside. You're growing your own food, you're making an effort, and we give you 2 thumbs up on that. So let's talk about some of the ones that you can start inside.
Well, for example, we have some kale here, and kale is a very popular leafy green vegetable that's become more popular throughout the years. We have some onions, and then like I mentioned before, tomatoes, peppers. What else?
Tomatoes, peppers. You can do a lot of herbs. You can start a lot of herbs inside.
Like, for example, with some cilantro here.
Now, one thing that may not be a familiar thing that someone could start inside is actual sweet corn. Sweet corn, you can get a jump start on sweet corn. And you can start it, and once it reaches about 2 or 3 inches, then you want to take it outside and plant it. But you just don't want to start all of this stuff at one time. No. And we're going to talk about that momentarily. What are some other things that you can start inside that you would want to?
The sweet potato. Sweet
potato. You can take the sweet potato slips and actually put them in water and allow them to root, and then you can plant the sweet potatoes outside in the garden.
Now, we've been growing this for almost a year, so if you want to get started on this, we would usually suggest you get started in January.
January, about 5 to 6 months prior to when you're wanting to put them outside, because it does take a while for the sweet potato to begin to put slips on, and that's what these little guys are called on the sweet potatoes. Potatoes, in general, you can buy seed potatoes, and we've got a great sponsor that we're working with. They're
Wood Prairie Farm.
And they're up in Maine. They're organic seed potatoes that we're working with. And you can buy those. You don't have to start those inside. You can purchase seed potatoes from your local home and garden center. Green beans, bush beans, you can start inside. That gets you a jump start. And also, for whatever reason, whenever you plant the bush beans that are established, 2 or 3 inches out in the garden, bugs seem to be less susceptible to chew on the leaves than if they're just piercing through the ground. So that seems to be an advantage that we're going to do this year. And you can start all of these in any type of tray or container, solo cup, whatever you have will work great. What are some other ones you would start?
Squash plants.
Squash plants. Now, you want to just start them small. And when you start these, you want to start them and bring them out when they're about 2 or 3 inches in height.
You can also do melons.
We can do melons, the same thing when they're a couple inches high. Now, this may be kind of confusing because when do you want to start those? And that brings us to our term of the week. Each week we have a term that in the gardening world that as gardeners we should all understand at some point or another. And that being this week's term is?
First frost date. Well, actually frost dates. But when you're determining when to start your seeds, then you're concerned about your last frost date. Your
last frost date of the year. And we'll have information below this video as well as on our website, which is the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. And you can take and search your zip code in your favorite search engine for last frost date and just enter your zip code.
And last frost date is determined by the 10 years before's frost date. So it's an average of, so say your frost date has been May 25th or May 30th or May 26th. They're going to take the average for those past 10 years. They're going to do their calculations, and then that'll be your last frost date for that season projected.
Projected, right. That's the key word. Because even though your last frost date may be May 15th, There could be a potential frost May 22nd. Usually once you get beyond 3 weeks of that last frost date, you're pretty much safe unless some real weird thing happens via the weather.
Right, and it's good to pay attention as gardeners. I know we pay attention to the weather quite greatly, especially as we're getting to that point where it's starting to be spring, things are starting to thaw, we want to put stuff into the ground. It's good to pay attention because you could have, especially here in Wisconsin, you could have like a 60-degree one day and then the next day it's like 30. So you have to kind of pay attention to that weather progression, the weather forecast, especially when you're going to be putting some cool tolerant or not so cool tolerant plants into the ground.
So, for example, onions and leeks can be started 8 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. Kale, 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. Celery, 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost date.
Tomatoes, 6 to 8.
6 to 8. Peppers, about 10 weeks before your last frost date. You can kind of find a chart online that's corresponding with your area that you live in, what to start. Now, one thing we forgot to mention, we told all the good things you can start inside. Let's go over some of the things that it's probably not good to start inside because they don't transfer well when you fiddle with their roots and put them in the ground.
Lettuce, spinach. What else?
Now, you will see some people start lettuce and spinach, but we recommend just put it straight in the ground, make it a one-time plant, don't transplant it. There are some people that successfully do plant that inside and transplant it out. We find it to be somewhat of a hassle in our opinion.
Also carrots, radishes.
Any root vegetable.
Aside from onions.
Exactly.
And
aside from onions and leeks. Any root vegetable, because the roots is actually where the fruit or the vegetable, the meat is on it, and you're disturbing it.
Well, onions are part of the Alyssium family, so it's kind of different than the radish and the carrots. Oh, also parsnips. You want to start parsnips directly in the ground as well.
And there's hundreds of other vegetables that you can start inside, and it's not recommended to start inside. And again, you can find it on your favorite search engine online. So that we don't want to scare you, but we want you to be successful
and to be aware.
And to be aware that onions is a great thing to start, but you don't want to spend a lot of time starting carrots because they're not going to transfer over very well into the garden, and you're going to be disappointed. So
just to save you time as well.
So until next time, I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird, and this has been First Garden, New Gardener. For more information, please visit thewwisconsinvegetablegardener.com.